Okay. All right, we're ready. Call this meeting to order. Start by the having the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. All right, welcome to the May 4th meeting of the NCSD Board of Education. We'll start with number one, the minutes from the last meeting. It's recommended that the Board of Education adopt the minutes from the April 20, 2022 regular meeting. Do I have a motion? So moved. Moved by Brian Reed. Second. Second by John Williams. Any discussion, additions, or corrections? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? So carried. Item number 2 on our agenda is the superintendent's report. Mr. Ryan, you have the floor.
Good evening, everyone. Glad it stopped raining outside. Hopefully, have a brief meeting this evening. You've now seen the presentation at least 2 different occasions. You received the newsletter, some more communication around it. So we're going to jump right into the hearing presentation and transition to Mr. Ryan Bartlett. Black cloud.
Okay, you guys are back. Don't worry, I can switch by it. All right. Where's my-
Okay. So tonight we have the budget hearing presentation. This is the same presentation everybody, I believe, in this room has heard before. So we're going to abbreviate. However, having said that, all of the budget documents are available on our website under business services, then school budget. The budget statement, Pam, is made available in each of our buildings at the Guernsey Library and then here in the district office. And then, of course, we'll take any meetings if anybody has questions. Any members of the public want to meet with us to discuss anything, we're happy to take those questions. So kind of skipping ahead, just adding a few notes here and there. The mission vision that we created last year helped guide every decision we made in this budget building process. We're certainly focused on how do we invest in our people program in place. When we think about where does our revenue come from, the main point to walk away from is our largest source is state aid at 69%. The tax levy is 27%, and then miscellaneous revenues makes up the rest of that pot. So just quick snapshot, state aid, you can see is going up $2.2 million. Most of that is due to foundation aid being fully funded in this first year of phase in at 50%. Next year, you would see that same variance. If everything stays the same, another $1.4 million coming in. Long story short, state aid is going up $2.2 million or 7.6%. Second largest source is the tax levy. So just showing the formula, highlighting that 2% is one of many variables in that equation. We run through that formula to calculate what that is for a district, which is unique to each district. Hard to see again, but 1.48% is our tax cap this year for 22-23. Key points includes $335,000 we're transferring to the capital fund to cover 2 projects. One is a capital outlay. The other is a transfer to capital. Both are covered district-wide wiring and finishing security upgrades. Putting it in context, we're at 1.48%. Less than our 5-year average and less than the average of the schools in our region. Just showing what that looks like. Tax illustration, this would be approximately a $20 increase on an average $100,000 home. Yeah, other variables play into this. You have equalization rates from the state, you have assessment values from assessors. Third largest source this year of our revenues is appropriate fund balance. So we're basically taking surplus funds from a previous year, appropriating those funds in to do one-time purchases. So this year we're going to be doing a lot of steam equipment, flexible furniture, all that good stuff. And there's our summary. So we're going up $3.268 million in revenue, and that helps to support what we're doing on the expense side. So This chart just shows a quick summary of where the expenses are going. I know you all have seen this before. Breaking that down into the three parts. So what you're seeing here is the administrative, you have program, capital. Again, I'll highlight what's in capital is the capital outlay project as well as the transfer capital project. We're required to illustrate that multiple times in the presentation. Showing so that 3.268 million, 72% is going directly to programs. So think right in the classrooms, 10% is going to facilities, so capital, and then 18% to administration. And again, summarizing, so we're going up 3.268 million on the revenue side, we're matching that on the expense side, and then we are balancing our budget as is required by New York State. The highlights, 13 FTE on the instructional side, 13 FTE on the non-instructional side. You're seeing contractual increases from the contracts that were set the previous year, and then we have a large increase for one-time expenses, which are matched with a one-time funding source. Last item is BOCE's budget increase as well, which is going to show year-over-year budget to budget increase. Just a list of the other items that go into our budget. So most of this is settled, DRS, ERS rate, FICA is always what FICA is. The last thing that's kind of settling right now is the health and dental. So we have a couple more things to settle on the dental side, and then we should be done. We're looking at low single digit increases here. Summary, balanced budget. We also include in our budget planning all these other kind of macro things that impact what we're looking at over the horizon. So we have the federal funds, which will be falling off in the next 2 to 3 years. We have what does revenue look like after the full phase in of foundation aid. So you're going to see flattening out of the tax cap and the foundation aid. Always looking at New York State's long-term financial health. You have the tax base is growing, is declining. Obviously, we're facing inflation right now. And then staffing, recruiting, retaining, are going to continue to be a challenge for that. So last, just a summary, 45,995,227 is our 22-23 budget. Second proposition is going to be a 2022 capital reserve. So we're taking an expired reserve, creating a new reserve, because both of them are capital in nature. Can't fund our current capital reserve, we've already fully funded. Currency budget of 1.289 million. We'll be voting on the levy, which is 1.025 million. And then we have 2 seats out for the board election. Last thing to note, one last time, includes 2 projects that are transferred from general fund to capital fund. And last, May 17th is the date of the vote, right here in this room, from 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. And then hopefully with a passed budget, we will be approving the budget on May 20th.
Yeah. So not really pertinent to the budget, but it came up when I was looking at it, has there been talk about bumping the capital outlay number up from 100,000 to more, because you can't really do a whole lot with 100,000?
Yeah, they tried to put it in this upcoming round of budget. It went down. They were proposing to get it up to 250 to 500,000. And they didn't pass it.
Okay.
Any other questions? Anyone in the public have questions on the budget?
Yeah. It's the last time we get to look at the budget.
Oh, I meant for me to walk by.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't have to revote.
Knock down laminate, knock down wood. All right, thank you very much. No.
So, Mr. Rolls, we're transitioning now on the
Yes.
agenda.
Yep.
So the next piece of superintendent update was,
Correct.
I want to provide the board with an update on a trip that a few of us took. Friday, a week ago now,
Yep.
almost.
Thursday, Friday, right?
Thursday, Friday last week. And so you have some data points in front of you right now, some pretty important data points, and I'm going to talk about those in just a minute. talk about it through the lens of what our goal has been, continues to be, and will continue to be as we strategically plan for 22-23. And that is, we have committed to continuous improvement in district as evidenced in our vision statement. We have a strong desire to become a data-driven school district where decision-making is based on specific data points and really focused in on academic achievement. What I can tell you is we're not there yet, okay? But it continues to be a goal. The third piece is that in our value statement, it really talks about promoting an unrelenting focus on meeting the needs of every student in an equitable manner. And I think those are the three pieces that I think of most when I reflect back on the trip that we took. There was there was 10 of us that attended this trip out to Connecticut to really review some practices, some really polished practices of a school district called Merited. So I want to take you back. We started this school year recognizing there's a significant lack of or absence of standardized assessment data, right? So you look at the Regents exams, you look at 3-8 assessments, and because those tests essentially didn't exist, or they existed, but certainly don't allow us a holistic view on student performance to be able to make decisions on, we started the school year using both academic and social emotional screeners. You're familiar with that? So think about iReady, the elementary buildings, think about the BIMAT, which was social emotional screener, and then secondary, the NWEA. Those are some of the pieces that you guys have heard before. And then we couple that with sort of the mass hysteria throughout the entire nation right now around this term of learning loss. Okay, so think about the lack of state reporting data, right, when it comes to those standardized tests. Couple that with the learning loss piece. I want you to now zoom in on that 2022 March enrollment data point that I just gave you. Specifically, we're looking at the 8th and 9th graders. So if we look at to date, well, to March 1st, essentially, 8th grade attendance, 87 students, 57% of that entire class has missed 10 or more days of instruction. In 9th grade, 69 students, 44% of that class cohort has missed 10 or more days. That's pretty significant. If we zoom in even further, right, those numbers get worse when we start talking about 20 days. Very soon, I'm going to have some information for you with respect to staff as well, some staff data. And again, the staff data is really important because many of them were quarantined. And so ultimately, that tells a story around learning loss, or really missed learning opportunities, okay? So when really reviewing our data, we review it through multiple angles and really think about the impact the data can have in terms of our decision-making. And so Norwich City School District looks at academic, certainly grade reporting, attendance, behavioral concerns, and or the number of referrals that one student has. We're looking at some trend data around that right now at each of our buildings. And then the last piece is classification type. What we're seeing as a product of the pandemic is that requests for IEP classification is increasing because potentially some students are perceived as stunted in their learning and or language development, which then impacts several things as we move forward on that learning continuum. So I want to zoom in just for a second on specifically the 8th and 9th grade transition. The 9th grade year is the #1 indicator. Performance during the 9th grade year is the #1 indicator on whether or not a student graduates in 4 years. Okay, ultimately, what's our goal? Increase student achievement, right? Ultimately, improve or increase graduation rate, right? So if we think about the accrual of at least 5 credits, go back to your data points. The percentage of students who did not accrue 5 or more credits in their freshman year, currently 11% at the high school. The number of 8th grade students with at least 1 behavioral referral, 28%. All of these are at-risk data points that suggest students are not on track to graduate in 4 years. Okay, by no means does this determine whether or not the student has success, but these are data points that we're looking at to really begin to think about how do we, excuse me, how do we support and how do we build intervention that is most supportive to our 9th grade class. Okay, so those things are what really informed that trip out to Connecticut. The second piece that I want to add, or the third piece rather, is in front of you, you have a course catalog. You're seeing that possibly for the first time. Some of you with students in the high school, maybe you have that in your, you got that in your mail already, got a chance to look at it. It's very different than what we've seen in the past. And I bring that to you because we have to be very mindful of the offerings for our students when thinking about how to engage them appropriately. So if you turn your data sheet over really quick, look at the list of possible course offerings for freshmen for this year. I want you to compare that, take all of those and transition those to the right, and then add the rest of those classes that you see on the right-hand column. What we're doing is we're looking to increase the amount of offerings that we have for our freshman class, to engage them in ways that we haven't been able to before, and certainly looking at, skill sets that the industry or workforce is currently demanding. Does that make sense? As you look at that, now you're seeing that for the first time. Sort of reviewing it. Any questions on that? Jess, did you want to add anything? Jess had a huge hand in development of this course catalog. One of the features that I want you to zoom in on are the QR codes. If you get an opportunity, use some of those QR codes. And what you'll find is it's a teacher that is videotaped themselves, really talking about the class and what the class entails, almost like a movie version of the syllabus.
Question I had, I saw this come up. I know it says question mark for ASL.
Oh.
Is the intent if ASL is added to ROOF that could be an offering instead of Spanish or French, or so they could take that as a
Yep.
as a foreign language requirement?
So like as their third year requirement or
Yeah, so right now, there's no such thing as a third year
or
requirement.
not third year.
So there's a checkpoint A and a checkpoint B. We were able to, at Norwich, provide it in 7th grade and in 8th grade. Students that aren't successful with checkpoint B, which allows for that high school credit, they take a third year. Okay, you can continue on the language all the way through your senior year with some of the higher
Okay.
course offerings that we have.
Or the advanced regents, don't you need a third language year?
There are a few different pathways for
Okay.
that. Yep.
As outlined in your course catalog.
Oh.
Yep.
So the other thing I would say is this is all a balanced staffing, right? So our other big area right now is recruitment and retention. So we're looking at, math vacancies with 0 applicants. We're looking at, floats, so languages other than English, vacancies with 0 applicants. So, it's that idea of being able to say, we really want to be dynamic and responsive to what our kids need in high school, and that, at the same time, looking for those folks who are certificated in those areas to be able to teach it will continue to be our struggle.
So I think the point that I want to make with both these data points as well as the course offerings is that it's really about balancing that environment, right? And creating a culture around learning. And at Norwich, we are really re-examining what that culture looks like and feels like for our students and for our staff. So one of the things we're talking about is surveying our students with respect to their perception around culture. One of the things, if you talk to teachers, this is not germane to Norwich, this is teachers in general in the education field, is that there's a lack of engagement, there's impulsivity, there's a lot of things that are impacting ultimately academic performance. And at the end of the day, a school district is an academic institution. And so we have a strong desire to really think about and be very mindful of transforming that culture around learning at Norwich City School District. And that's what some of these things are really starting to zoom in on. So when we look at culture, we have to first look at where those foundational enabling conditions, right? And that's why we went to Connecticut. Not to look at what Connecticut specifically is doing so we can grab a canned approach and bring it back to Norwich, but rather what are those enabling conditions to allow this culture of learning to exist, and what are those wraparound supports they have for kids. Many of you know that Mr. Rolls was able to go with us on this trip, so he doesn't know, but I'm going to ask him to share a couple of things, a couple of his takeaways as well. Ultimately, when this program went in, again, it was a journey, didn't happen overnight. They have seen double-digit increases in their overall graduation rate with how they've chosen to address the 9th grade class with wraparound service intervention. Okay. So again, a team of about 10, team of 10 went to Connecticut. we were really looking for, enabling conditions. Many of them walked away with very different sort of takeaways, but specifically, we keyed in on grade 9 on-track strategies. First, we have to identify what does on-track mean, and that's different in every school, certainly different in every state. So what are those strategies to really identify what on-track looks like? What are the on-track data teams talking about? What data are they tracking? And what are the protocols that support review of that data? It was a huge piece. The third piece, again, is it's in order to achieve these results, this didn't happen overnight. It's an extensive journey. The school district's been on for a long time. And then lastly, what did the facility look like and what were the structures that were in place to support this culture of learning in this school district? Okay. Any questions on that so far? So what I can tell you, my immediate takeaways is number one, it offered some significant validation of the work we're doing with MTSS right now. John, what's MTSS stand for? Get this out of the park, John.
Technology.
Oh, right.
Multi-tiered system of support.
Multi-tiered system. I thought I teed up for you.
I know,
John.
I was trying to rip, I'm like,
So again, our district-wide effort, our investment in the MTSS approach, right, and really taking data at the student level and bringing that back to intervention teams to really discuss what are we doing for kids that can with varying degrees of success and can't, right? So it offered a great deal of validation. And I think the other piece that I walked away with, this is where I'm going to ask Chris to really talk about his takeaways, it aligned perfectly with our whatever it takes leadership philosophy. Chris?
It was a phenomenal experience because, you know, he stole some of my thunder with the validation of what we're already seeing happen in our school. But one of the things that I really took away with is during our day on Friday, we were led around on a tour by a student. Her name was Jamie. And one of the constant themes that she always talked about was we do this, we do that. And you could tell that the culture at the school was about the student body, all the students. And whenever she spoke about something that was happening there or the support systems, it was always about we. That was a huge thing that I walked away with and just felt that it was just a foundational part of how these students, when they come to that school, to that high school, we were at Platt High School and Meriden Central Schools. And it's just something that's part of their environment when they come to that school. And it's foundational. And it starts in that ninth grade, that the beginning there. So that was a huge thing that I walked away with. And, you know, another thing is Mr. Graham is not here, so I'll pull him under the bus with me. But we also had a panel with 2 students on it and some of these OnTrack coordinators. And one of the panel members was a 9th grader who basically said that if it wasn't for this OnTrack system, he wouldn't have been there. And he was just fine telling us that. And he recognized these OnTrack coordinators that were in the room. And one of them was a teacher. The other one was a senior who basically said, if it wasn't for this system of supports, he would never have gotten there. And basically the way he talked about it, Mr. Graham and I were in the back trying not to show everyone that we were getting weepy because he was sincere and honest about his experience in high school and the culture that has lifted him and brought him along. So it was incredible and very inspiring to go to this school and see the level of culture that has been created by the system of supports, this OnTrack system that really has identified those at-risk kids and specifically given them different levels and kinds of support during their high school, career. And I don't know whether one of the things that we actually sat around as an audience and watched one of their OnTrack fishbowl. Basically, it was they called it a fishbowl where everyone is just kind of watching what, and there was several teachers. They actually had an athletic academic person who specifically, now granted, this is a very large school,
1,100.
1,100 students in that high school, and there's another high school across town. But they have an athletic academic person who specifically focuses on when an athlete is not performing academically, that person is part of this team and says, all right, we're working on this. And it starts out with the positives. They went around the table and said all the positive things that are happening with this student. And then they talk about, okay, what are the next steps of support? What can we do as individuals or as a team to support that student, to help them stay on track? So it was very moving. It was very inspiring. Everyone was positive. Everyone was excited about the success that these students are seeing. I could go on all day about it, but it was a fantastic experience. And I'm very, very pleased and appreciative that I was able to go along.
Is there some of the differences, right? When I think about where we are, some of our aspirations and some of the things that they had that we didn't. First, there was a very close analysis on grading practices in district. Okay, a great deal of uniformity and a really student-centered focus with respect to what grading looks like and sounds like in every discipline across the board. The second piece was the level of student investment. Here's what I mean by that. 4 times a year, 1,100 students have a day of no instruction, and they are scheduled to have an OnTrack conference. And that OnTrack conference happens with a board member, potentially, a director of business service, a teacher, a custodian, a grounds person. All of the people, all the adults in the building are assigned a single case for the entire day, a single caseload, if you will. And they might have 10 OnTrack conferences in that day, where a student literally comes to the table, the adult is sitting there with the academic performance data sheet in front of them to say, talk to me about how you're doing. What are the supports that you think you need to be more successful than you currently are? What's not happening? What are the good things? They take all those notes, all that information is funneled back to the student support services team. That happens 4 times a year, right? So the student investment, that whatever it takes philosophy, no matter who the person is in the organization, right? They have an investment in that child's success. So that was another major takeaway. And the third piece, which is probably the largest, they had the second lowest per pupil expenditure per child in Connecticut. You spend about almost $15,000 on each student a year. Now, it doesn't make sense, right? You would think that if you're going to provide all of these different supports to students, that their number one, their budget must be robust. They must have all kinds of staff. What they rely on greatly is community partnership and private partnership. And they have multiple foundations, multiple agencies, all within the school, all working towards a single focus. Every one of those players are at those data team meetings that Chris just described on a regular basis, talking about how do we ensure on-track success.
One of the things that OnTrack conferences, it's super informal. They set this beautiful media center up like Starbucks, and they have, it's super comfortable, all high top tables, and the student and that individual come in and they sit at a table. It's just one-on-one in a room with other people. So it's very informal, but it's inviting and comfortable. And I was super impressed when I heard about that too.
It's a training level for the OnTrack advisors.
So what they do in that 8th to 9th grade transition is pretty specific, right? They identify a caseload of students. So of that 1,100 students, the students that are identified in that 8th to 9th grade year, the caseload is about 65 to 70. Okay. So basically they're creating an entire team focused on that population. That population will never decline. They'll be with them the entire year. It could grow, right? If somebody wasn't identified initially, it could be added to the list. So you have a counselor, an assistant principal, you have multiple teachers that are teaching English, math, all the course, all at that table. And so.
And no one ever comes off the list.
Yep.
So once you're on the list, you're always on the list so that your success quote unquote guaranteed. You're never, you don't get to a point and they go, off you go. You're always on the list. And I think one of the things that you were thinking about is if you or I were to be on that OnTrack group, there is some training. I think it's a day or
Right, for the
something like that
conferences,
for
there
the
is a training and
conferences.
protocol. Are you speaking about training for the leadership team and the staff? In
Both,
terms of,
Yeah.
yeah,
both actually.
that's probably where Rise
Yeah.
comes in.
This is the culture that I'm really alluding to,
Yeah.
Brian, is, and I think what you're speaking to is that it takes a special kind of person, right, to be able to put it all in line and say whatever it takes. You know, it foregoes planning times and things like that for these teachers. They were very clear to say, I signed up for this. And that means a lot of times I don't eat lunch alone. Matter of fact, I probably don't eat lunch.
Yeah.
Right? A lot of those things happen. They have Saturdays, 8 to 11, people are coming in to say there's credit recovery occurring every Saturday. Those types of things happen because people say, I'm invested.
That was a big piece. We were like, when we heard about the Saturday morning credit recovery opportunity, there was no question. It wasn't like, it was their culture. It's what's available, and teachers sign up to do it without question. It's part of their duty. And it's just part of what they do. It is a culture there. It's a real culture.
What kids get referred to the OnTrack, or how do they?
There's a
Like,
set criteria.
There's always that group that falls through the crack because they're the middle class of
Mm-hmm.
students. Or not middle class like financial, but they're the students that are forgotten.
Yeah.
Yeah, so how would they get referred to the OnTrack or?
So there's a set of criteria, right? They said it's pretty simple. Academics, discipline, and attendance. Those 3 areas, and they have a threshold to say you're either on or you're not. Right? And there's constant monitoring. Like every single kid has an OnTrack conference. Every single kid, regardless of whether or not you're part of this case management team. But they're really looking at that lower echelon to make sure we're lifting those kids up. Again, really focused on the importance of that 9th grade year. If you don't accrue those credits your 9th grade year,
Yeah,
the
and
likelihood, right, of you recovering those credits diminishes significantly.
their counseling office is, it's big. There were I think 9 just in high school counselors.
Guidance counselor.
Yes.
Yeah, it's 11 words too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then 2 of those were the 9th grade OnTrack coordinators, and they each had a caseload of 65 students. So they were, 130 kids that were in that OnTrack.
280 graduating class.
Yeah, so they're almost 50% of the people are on track.
So,
But their partnership with Rise, which is our next step, to really just talk to them about some of the dashboard information that those teachers have access to. I think that's going to be a big step for us.
Yeah.
To use the data in front of our teachers every day, where we are emotion free when we're talking about some of the struggles that we're seeing with kids, and really talking about solely the interventions that need to take place and where their responsibility lies. And we're seeing pockets of that now with some of our MTSS teams. So again, very validating. Some of the work that we're doing.
the data was a huge piece of it, and they had a dashboard that gave them for every student during this fishbowl exercise. They put it on the screen for us where you could see the academic performance of the student in every class through the current grading period. There was a score for behavior, for attendance, and things were red, orange, green. So their data was really laid out so that they could, in one look, see where this student was and really talk specifically about that.
I think the second piece to that, Chris, is that, it's one thing to have the data. The second piece is now what?
Yeah.
Right? You have to have structures that are in place that students can attend that can be supported differently than they are in the gen ed population. And then, so that comes through the lens of master schedule, right? You have to have those types of times and those people to be able to perform those duties to support students differently than they are being supported in the classroom. Otherwise, you're just replicating what they saw in the classroom when they initially didn't have success. So it's a really cool concept. And so looking at some of those best practices, some of those foundational enabling conditions, and thinking about that as we begin to move forward. So wanted to bring that to you. And it was a good group of people that we took. And so conversations will continue about some of those things that make sense in our culture, and then those things that we think will help help us certainly elevate that goal for graduation, increasing graduation rate.
Brian, did you have something? I thought I might have spoken over you. I'm sorry. Did you have something? Great. Thanks. Great. Thank you very much.
Thank
you. Next item on the list. Community one book.
Let me introduce the Director of Teaching and Learning, Ms. Jessica Boyer.
So, while we're talking about multi-tier system supports, really we're talking about like, what are we doing with tier one instruction, right? So that first time the kids are coming to the classroom, what does that experience look like? So I just, want to sort of wrap this around and say, focusing on a different population, our elementary students, moving into next year, we have spent the last 2 years really focused on Writers Workshop, and that work will continue to implement that at a high level. And then we're also looking really strategically at reading. And, again, looking at some of the data that we have coming out of iReady and our focus and our benchmarking, and thinking about it really through, 3 approaches. So our curriculum, our staffing, and then the training for our teachers. I can tell you that the young folks coming out of college right now need our support in terms of professional learning to really be able to say, I am a reading teacher. So the culture that we've had for the last 20 years has been, if kids aren't succeeding in the tier one classroom, someone else is really the reading teacher. And we're working to shift that narrative to say you are the classroom teacher, and parents first, and then you are the child's really second reading teacher. So we are purchasing a new curriculum for K2 that will include really a balanced approach, but a more strategic approach with phonological awareness and phonics. So now you're thinking, what is she talking about with one community, one book? So I just really want you to sort of have that solid understanding of what's happening in the classroom, and then really looking at our mission and vision and saying, how are we connecting that at home? How are we saying to families, we have a value on reading and placing a big value on that? So for the first time, we're going to engage in one community, one book. And what that looks like is we've had a team of folks, community members, parents, administrators, teachers, move through this process of really saying, what could this look like in Norwich? And so I'm really excited to say that you have your wrapped book. This is my current new version of wrapping in there, which is a surprise. So the team has worked to choose a book that we think is really reflective of our community, and we're really proud of this choice. And so tomorrow, our faculty will actually receive a wrapped book. It's a better attempt than mine, as we unveil what the book title is. And then next week at an assembly, every family in our community will receive a copy of the same book. And you'll see in here, there's a letter and a calendar of reading. And so what it looks like is kids will engage in reading at home, and it will be tied together with some videos of folks reading a chapter. So I think Mr. Ryan will probably kick it off with chapter 1. So get your rocking chair ready.
Ready.
And so, for the kids who maybe aren't having that experience at home, they'll watch the video of the chapter being read aloud in school, and there will be trivia and all sorts of other pieces that tie it together. And then I'm really excited to say that the author of said surprise book will be visiting Norwich during our culminating event on June 10th, which I think ties in really beautifully with the work that we've done around saying to our kids, you are writers. And so please meet a real life author who's going to engage in a workshop with you. And then really great that we have community involvement. So Jen actually has been on our team as well. And so she has garnered that community support. Kids will engage in a scavenger hunt through many of our businesses. The library is participating and has also purchased, here comes a clue, 50 copies of the sequel to the book. So I just, want to offer you all an opportunity to engage in the experience with our kids. And that is one community, one book.
We can't
Can't
open
open
it
it
till
till
tomorrow.
I already opened it.
You gotta close it
Oh,
out.
no, I thought it was like a packet of
You
stuff.
gotta close it
No,
out.
I don't remember the name. I was like,
Well,
Okay.
thank goodness.
I'm gonna read it
For
tonight.
those of you, I
Which
think
one?
it's, here it is, the only one with kids in elementary school, right? So
Correct.
Yeah.
May, so yeah, so don't tell anybody. Try to keep the.
Brian has a leg up. He signed the PO. I didn't. Well, I didn't know what it is.
What's that?
Brian has a leg up. He signed the PO.
Oh,
So a great use of our title money, as well for our parent engagement funds. So, yeah,
we'll have to form a book club.
Great.
yes, so.
Excited.
Yeah,
right?
Keep
Again,
us
There.
think
posted
about
on the
that mission
June
vision
10th
about,
thing.
community
with the author.
partnerships. This is again taking us more in that direction. So excited.
I'm gonna seal mine back up.
My last statement was if you as a board member. would
I'm
like
not
to-
a rule
I
follower.
would love
So,
to.
in terms of teamwork, Mrs. Marvin is soliciting readers, so she will engage you in that. So if you want
Yeah.
to raise your hand. to
Yeah,
see-
we've got
I
a
would love
volunteer
to. I
here.
would be glad to do
Brian
that.
Reed is a really good reader.
All right, so get
Great
yourself
vocalist
ready.
as well.
Yes.
Brian, you can't sing a chapter.
No, I think Katie Voss got both Brian and I like to go in and read something, I think, didn't we?
We did. we
Yep.
met For second grade at one point, that's right.
A
Yeah,
lot of fun. I encourage you to
That's
do
good.
it was fun.
All right, so
Anything to
maybe we'll be in
embarrass,
touch.
anything to embarrass my high school children.
Oh, yeah, can I
That's
come in
exactly
and
what I was
read?
thinking.
Yeah.
And so all
I'd like to
all
come in
the
and read in
recordings
10th
will be on our
grade
website
English.
as well.
Great. No, I think that's fantastic. I am a firm believer in reading. You know, it was definitely foundational in my kids. My kids growing up, we read a lot at home, and now I have a voracious senior reader who's going off to college just for that anyway. So awesome. Thank you.
Chris, two other updates that
Okay.
came in kind of after the draft of the agenda went out. And so received a phone call from the mayor today, who stated that a signed agreement for the SRO full-time is in the mail.
Nice.
So
Sounds great.
I think a great, again, collaboration that occurred to ensure that that happened a little longer than we wanted. Again, we're all pretty excited to have Officer Clark on full-time, despite him being here for quite some time anyway. So
Right.
taking it that
Great.
next step, really solidifying. Once we have this in place, what we can do, I think more effectively is communicate roles and responsibilities so that everybody is aware district-wide and moving us one step closer to a safer learning environment for our kids.
You can read too. We can video and read.
Oh, yes.
I've already
he said
been
it,
recruited.
Nice. Fantastic.
The last thing is that hopefully by now you've seen the email that went out. We are engaging our community with thought exchange to really try to develop some Q&A around our proposed budgets. Sometimes, but again, there's a great deal of misconception that's out there. I've only received maybe a couple emails from our community regarding what they've seen in the newsletter. Actually, a couple of good suggestions on things that we possibly could put in the newsletter moving forward to help.
Oh, good.
And so just was going to open it up to ask the board if they've heard anything, if they wanted to comment on it. And certainly you'll be part of some conversation around where this thought exchange takes us.
I didn't have time to
Develop
look at it.
Q&A. So please, I would encourage you to go in and really take a look. I mean, listen, the one thing you can't control, when you ask for it, be ready for it. Right? So there will be some things that, people take this opportunity to say, here are the things that I don't like about Norwich City School District. Know that that's going to be there. We're very prepared for that. And our thinking is that once we develop some themes from this, we can do some recordings to be able to provide responses to some of the potentially misconceptions that are out there. If not, maybe a live forum where we're just sitting around sort of answering these. Hey, Ryan, there's a question about X. Want to answer that right now? And so that kind of delivery to be able to help within the next 10 or 12 days before the vote. Okay,
Thank you.
great.
Anything else?
That's it for me.
Good, great. All right, we'll move on to item number 3, discussion. We do have an extra one that's on there that's not on there that I'll just, a quick update. One of the things that we've been working on over the last year is integrating super eval in our board process for evaluating Mr. Ryan. One of the things that we accomplished a bit ago was Mr. Reed and I met with both Ms. Boyer and Mr. Bartlett and kind of did a 360 review of Mr. Ryan. That's complete. We need to put our heads together and kind of have an output of that. But again, we're close to initiating the end of the year review for Mr. Ryan through super eval. So we'll be inputting all that in there as well. So just an update on that. We have it done, and Brian and I need to put our heads together and just have some outcome from that when our schedules allow, as we're both
Running a
running.
baseball game.
Yeah, we talk at baseball games together. So So that's that. Any questions about that or? Great. The second thing is on here on our discussion items is staff appreciation. So one of the things I wanted to do is today I sent an email to all staff via the email system. And I just want to take the opportunity to read out loud here at the meeting what I sent to all of our teachers and staff so that everyone knows what I sent. And then we have it for the minutes. So
Just for the record, this is on behalf of the Board of
it
Education.
is on behalf of the Board of Education and it states it in there. So the beginning of May gives us a glimpse of spring and ushers in Teacher Appreciation Week. Teachers play a vital role in the success of our district. It is important to also recognize the tireless effort of every one of our staff. Without the dedication to our mission of every employee at the Norwich City School District, we would be unable to lead our students toward the future. Our Purple Tornado family has endured through incredibly difficult times. We recognize the strength and courage required of you. We recognize the extra dose of compassion you have given, even when you were exhausted. On behalf of the Norwich City School District Board of Education, I would like to express our deepest gratitude to you, our talented teachers and staff. Thank you. And then I put the board members in there. So for the record, that's what was sent out today.
I'll start the applause.
And I, what's the PLT, not the PTA, whatever they did. PT. Yes, they did bagels for everyone. I saw that on Facebook, so that was nice.
We've had a themed day each day in each of the buildings in the bus garage for staff appreciation.
Great. All right, any other discussion items? We'll keep moving here. All right, number 4 is consent items. I will entertain a motion to approve all the items in the consent item. Moved by John Williams, second by Brian Burton. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? So carried. All right, action items. NCSD revised instructional calendar approval. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the attached revised NCSD instructional calendar for the 2022-2023 school year.
So
Moved by
Second.
moved by Brian Reed, second by Ross.
Laugh at me now.
Any discussion or?
When I read
comments?
the, I was like,
So for the record, so you guys are aware, we had the finalized version, and what was uploaded as a link was not the finalized version. It was, you guys approved a 188-day calendar last week, or last time we met, which is really a week and a half ago, feels like anyway. And so this has been corrected, and is a 186-day calendar.
Great.
My
Okay.
apologies.
Any comments or questions additional? All those in favor?
aye.
Any opposed? So carried. Approval of resolution. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the attached resolution awarding contracts for the NCSD emergency boiler project. Motion moved by Brian Burton,
Second.
second by Brian Reed. Any comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So carried. I'll entertain a motion to approve the personnel recommendations.
Motion.
Moved by Brian Burton,
Second.
second by Brian Reed. Any questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So carried. Do we have any public comment over there?
Doesn't look like it.
Okay, so with no public comment, we are having an executive session today. Yeah, we will be taking no action, we'll be discussing personnel matters. Okay. All right, all those, I'll entertain a motion to go into executive session. Moved by
Second.
Brian Reed, second by Roz Francis. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, so carried.
Can
All
we
right,
get that
we're gonna go to
camera off
executive
with me
session.
now?
Yes.
God.
Sorry. It's always there, usually it's just hidden. Just keep it. Yeah.
Record my time.
Time limit.